where Gladys threatens Alex. She tells him to sit and then proceeds to lay down the ground rules to keep his parents alive. She goes on to tell him what she's capable of making his parents do. And if you listen closely and really think about what she's saying, it's easy to catch the constant personified references and embodiment of being alcohol.
I can make your parents hurt themselves. I can make them hurt each other. I can make them eat each other if I want to. Do I want to, Alex?
She tells Alex that she could make his parents hurt themselves, hurt each other, and even eat each other. Now, the eat each other part was for a dramatic narrative effect of the story itself, to drive the point home. But everything else she said is indicative of someone who displays alcoholic behavior, pushing them to possibly hurt themselves and to hurt others while under the influence. The next day after Alex returns from school, Gladys tells him that there won't be any talking today and that he'll need to feed his parents some soup that's in the kitchen. And there's an aspect of this scene that could easily go without being noticed, and that's because it's only told through visual narration, which is one of Zach Cregger's favorite cinematic story techniques. But before I reveal to you guys exactly what that is, I gotta pay some bills. So we have a quick message from today's sponsor, Manta Sleep, the creators of the world's best sleep mask and sleep accessories. Manta Sleep is all about helping you recharge, promoting better sleep and power naps so you can wake up feeling sharp, focused, and ready to take that sleep from traveling. Let's get back to the reveal of Zach Cregger's visual narration techniques. For example, in Barbarian, when he shows Tess not drinking the tea with her in the frame, it's a sign that she doesn't trust Keith. Or when she's outside making the call, but after a look around the neighborhood, she decides to go back and sit in her car, which clearly displays how she feels it's too dangerous to make the call from the porch. These are things we all understand because of the visual narration. Nothing has to be said. We understand the situations. Now, this is a technique that all movies use to some degree, but since horror isn't typically seen as a strong narrative genre, it's usually not as prevalent here to see directors making decisions like this. But now that brings us back to weapons and the upgrade in visual narration we see from Zach in his latest horror film. Like the one we were just talking about with Alex and Gladys after Alex arrives back home from school, Alex checks Gladys's room first because she's not downstairs with his parents, and we can see furniture piled up in the corner, but Gladys isn't there. Then he goes to his parents' room and Gladys is seen on the floor with her whole ritual set up ready to go. The visual narrative element here is how Gladys made Alex's parents move the furniture for her while Alex was away, and although it's never said, it's seen. Now there's more super obvious moments like this as well, like the reddish paint on the back of Archer's truck, which shows how he was the one who painted the word witch on Justine's car. And then there's more deeply symbolic narrative moments like where we constantly see Marcus consuming junk food in almost every scene we see him in. Narratively, this is Zach's way of showing how something extremely disturbing can walk into the home of someone so ordinary. Junk food is one of the most relatable everyday items that almost everyone consumes to some degree. This one relatable element makes the viewer feel almost like Gladys could just as easily walk into your home and disrupt your peace as well. And since we're already on the subject of visual narrative and symbolism, I should mention how Gladys is always wearing imagery of flowers and the symbolism of Alex sometimes framed with whales throughout the film. So something subtle but deliberate about Gladys is her constant association with flowers. On the surface, flowers symbolize beauty, innocence, and growth. But in her case, they work as camouflage. She's a parasite that steals life while wearing the mask of something pure. This actually mirrors how alcohol itself is often dressed up in the real world as glamorous and harmless, when in reality it can wither families from the inside out. Just like those flowers, Gladys's imagery of peace and joy isn't real. It's borrowed, decaying and hiding something toxic underneath. Then we open Alex's segment with him facing the whiteboard, and in front of him are two categories, parasites and whales. And this is a quiet but deliberate setup positioning Alex in front of two forces that define his story. The parasite embodied by Gladys, and the whale, a symbol of depth, endurance, and the creative weight Zach pulled from his own life. See, Zach has often referenced his admiration for David Lynch, even shaping Gladys's look after the red-haired woman in Twin Peaks' Fire Walk With Me.
So yeah, her look is based off of in Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me, when he gets out of the plane and there's that woman on the tarmac. That scared the fucking shit out of me.
David Lynch once said that ideas are out there waiting to be caught, and how if you don't catch them, someone else will. Zack said that he imagines ideas as big fish under the water.
David Lynch went a step further. He said that ideas are out there waiting to be caught, and if you don't catch it, somebody else will. He says catching the big fish. I like to think you go down under the ocean and there are these big fish swimming around, and I can hook them, but if I don't, that story's gonna get told one way or another.
So when Alex is repeatedly framed with well imagery, from the design of his backpack to the middle finger on his wall, and even this opening classroom shot, it's more than just a background detail. Alex, who Zack has already admitted represents himself, is marked by the well as a vessel for this enormous idea. The well becomes Zack's weight of inspiration he pulled from the depths of his own childhood grief and turned into storytelling. And now that brings us back to stage 2, closing out with Gladys telling Alex how he'll need to feed his parents.
You'll need to feed your parents. There's soup in the cabinet. Tomorrow you'll get some more.
Which is another reference to how a child may have to take care of their alcoholic parents, since them being constantly intoxicated would definitely affect their normal daily functions. And although we won't point out every single one, there are many aspects and references like this throughout the film that point back to alcoholism. Then lastly, we have Alex breaking free in stage 3. I want to pause and give Zack major props for how he used match cuts throughout weapons. I don't think I've ever seen a film, especially a horror film, rely on them this frequently yet still maintain such clarity. What's really impressive is that the cuts aren't just there for style. He uses them as a way to collapse time and keep each character's story moving without losing rhythm. Within each segment, the match cuts become a visual shorthand, carrying us through long stretches of their journey in a way that feels fluid instead of jarring. It's a subtle technique, but it gives the film a steady pulse, letting us live inside each character's perspective without ever dragging. And I'm really loving this upgrade in his directing style. But now on to stage 3, after Alex is forced to gather his classmates' belongings so Gladys can use her magic and drain the children of their energy. Alex wants to know that if he does this, will she go back home when she gets better? And of course she lies and tells Alex, yes, she will go back home if she gets better. Once again, more lies accompanied by empty hope that one would like to believe under the influence. It's almost like Zack making a promise to his parents that if he'll behave, maybe they'll have a happier family again. And as we already know, the kids are summoned at 217, which if you already know, this is a number that is heavily influenced by Stephen King's work. 217 in the film is already confirmed by Zach Kreger to mean exactly what I'm about to tell you, because I know that there were many theories floating around online surrounding the meaning of 217. But in The Shining, specifically Stephen King's novel, Room 217 is where some of the most terrifying events occurred. That's where Danny, the kid in that film, encountered the ghostly woman in the bathtub. King made 217 the haunted room to anchor much of the hotel's malevolent presence. In Weapons, Gladys summoning the children at 217 works as a direct echo of that idea. The number signals a crossing point where ordinary reality breaks and something parasitic and supernatural asserts control. Zack is a huge fan of Stephen King, so this is him paying homage to his work. But moving forward with the story, after Justine and Archer enter Alex's home and they discover the children, and Alex is finally able to use Gladys's own magic against her by having the kidnapped children literally rip her apart, Gladys is ultimately defeated. And while the children are able to return home to their parents, some never fully return to who they once were. And Alex suffers a deeper loss. He couldn't save his parents. Though they survived, they are left in a near vegetative state, forcing Alex to leave his home and live elsewhere. And this feels deeply symbolic, reflecting what Zack himself endured as a child, the pain of watching his parents slip away, unable to save them, and the bittersweet reality of escaping a destructive environment while still carrying the weight of what was lost. So yeah, he wasn't lying when he said that this film was deeply personal to him. He wrote, directed, produced, and even scored the film himself, meaning that he was one of the artists that produced the music for his movie. So even the instruments and sounds you hear throughout the film were specifically crafted in that moment by him and some friends he was in a band with back in high school, which is another deeply personal element. And lastly, everything gets wrapped up in a nice little bow when you realize that the triangle within the circle, which is a symbol heavily tied to the film, is actually the symbol used for Alcoholics Anonymous. The AA circle and triangle symbol traditionally stands for balance, recovery, unity, and service contained within wholeness. It's a hopeful image tied to overcoming addiction and rebuilding stability. And of course, Alcoholics Anonymous is a real-life, peer-led fellowship program to help those with alcohol addiction. But in Weapons, that meaning feels hollow. Alex can't save his parents, who survive but are left in a vegetative state, and the children never return to their old selves, paralleling how addiction and trauma permanently scar those it touches. So Alcoholics Anonymous also has 12 steps, and I think the 6 beside the inverted triangle on the bill marks not only demonic forces, but the halfway point, someone stuck in the middle of recovery and unable to fully break free. When Gladys displays the inverted triangle on her magic bell, it means a lot more than you might think it would mean. It's a reversal of the symbol's meaning. Instead of recovery, it suggests collapse. Instead of unity, it's isolation. And instead of service, destruction. Inverting the triangle transforms a beacon of hope into a mark of evil, or even despair. The hidden message Zack embedded in Weapons, reshaped into one of the most powerful horror films of the year. It feels less like fiction and more like a director confronting his past and turning trauma into art. And that's exactly why, for me, Weapons isn't just one of the best horror films of the year. It's a defining work from one of the boldest voices in modern horror.
Well, what do you think, Izo? Katsu has real vision, doesn't he? Bet he taught you a thing or two.
Indeed, he's a great man. You know, he didn't come from money, had no pedigree, but you would be
Hereditary is the kind of horror film you end up with when the director enjoys traumatizing you. It has one of the most disturbing climaxes in horror movie history, but Peter's final moments as, well, Peter, before the Demon King payment takes over might arguably be the most traumatizing scene in particular, in my opinion. Maybe even more frightening than Charlie's decapitation for many reasons that will eventually be explored later in this video. But first, here's some quick context. If you're a horror fan, which you probably are since you clicked on this video, you already knew from the thumbnail that this scene is from Hereditary, a 2018 movie written and directed by Ari Aster and distributed by A24. It was Aster's featured directorial debut and became A24's highest grossing film at the time, which is a major milestone for most horror films, and that's because of two key factors. One, Hereditary excels from a storytelling perspective. That's because it uses a lot of uncanny audio visuals to amplify its sense of need. And it doesn't just rely on jump scares to scare the audience. It crafts an atmosphere so thick with tension and grief that the horror feels inescapable. And two, the cinematography. Aster intentionally tried to make the scenes inside the house cramped and, in his own words, a lighthouse aesthetic. The idea here is to make us feel like there's danger lurking everywhere by having disturbing silhouettes in the environment and shadows, while also misdirecting us with close-ups and ultimately reminding us that just like in a dollhouse, these characters are not in control and their fate has already been decided. In the scene we're going to discuss, Peter's character specifically has suffered a lot up to this point. There was his grandmother Ellen's passing, which is where the film begins with Gilbert's then him accidentally killing his sister Charlie while ironically trying to save her due to post-manipulation, and then ultimately being tortured by one of the 8 kings of hell, Payman, and the cult before eventually discovering his charred father's corpse, his possessed demonic mom, and then meeting his own demise. Peter gets no breaks throughout this film and can barely find peace even when he's trying to sleep. Ari Aster ensures that Peter is only treated like the sacrificial lamb he is, and he wants this to be very clear and upsetting to the audience. This scene is not only riddled with many personal fears from Ari, but it shows his enjoyment of successfully traumatizing the viewer with many unforgettable repulsive images. Although it's unfortunate for Peter, all of these misfortunes are crucial for the Demon King Payman to possess him. Peter being haunted by Charlie's death leaves him emotionally shattered. Then Annie becoming increasingly unstable and hostile towards him deteriorates his relationship with his family. And by the end of this sequence, Peter is left mentally and emotionally exhausted and defenseless. This leaves him as an empty vessel, which is the ideal vulnerable state to be inhabited by the demon Payman. The scene begins with a hard cut, transitioning from day to night as we can see that the house is completely surrounded by Ellen's fellow naked cult members. They all face the house like an audience ready to observe as Payman completes his ritual. And if we look closely, we can still see the flickering light on the trees from where Payman engulfs Steve in flames near the window. This scene is abrupt and shocking because it's thrust upon us as viewers, which is actually foreshadowing for Peter once we cut to the next scene where he's waking up and will also be thrust into his final moments. We open with a close-up here as Peter is awoken by a weird noise. For the moment, we're left to wonder what it is just like him. He looks out of the window where the candlelit ritual in the treehouse is waiting for him. This is Peter's last warning sign, which has been foreshadowed and constantly ignored by him throughout the film.
Because he literally refuses to look at all the signs that are being literally handed to him the entire play.
Interesting. So he thinks he has control.
When his mom slept there after Charlie's death, Peter could see the red light from the space heater through the window. And now that the cult is there with the candles, he sees an orange light. Red and orange are often colors associated with danger and warning signs, which is another reference back to Peter ignoring clear signs. And afterwards is where we get to see this first horrifying wide-angle shot. This shot is definitely creepy at first glance. Annie, possessed by the demon Payman, cling to the wall in the darkness above Peter. But that's only what we see. If we further observe the blocking of these characters, which is their position in the frame, it's very fitting that Payman is placed above Peter in the frame, because Payman is believed to be an angel who followed behind Lucifer in his rebellion against God. Given his high rank and powerful position in hell, it makes sense that Payman would be placed high above Peter in this shot, and Peter on the other hand is insignificant and unaware of his impending doom. This is a common visual technique used in filmmaking to convey the power dynamics of their relationship. Then in this medium shot, we get to see our first sample of what Payman is capable of in a possessed body once the ritual is right around the corner. He silently floats through the air into the darkness while Peter is left once again vulnerable and clueless. Ari is purposely subverting our expectations here with Payman's slightly goofy but creepy way of leaving Peter's room. Although it's unexpected, it's very effective at complementing the unsettling tone. And it's also important to mention that throughout this sequence, Payman primarily holds a position of power above Peter in the frame. Only once does the dynamic change throughout Peter's final moments, and once we get to that scene, I'll further explain why this temporary shift happens. Once Peter steps into his parents' bedroom, we receive our first big narrative audio element from this sequence, outside of the constant buzzing sound of flies.
Mom? Dad?
And it's the sound of Payman ripping the cord from the piano that's later used to decapitate Annie. After Peter closes Charlie's room door, which was left open by the cult, we get another impressive wide shot here, which not only shows how alone Peter is in this moment, but it symbolizes how the darkness is beginning to close in on him. And what's even more clever here is how it's revealed right afterwards downstairs in the bottom right hand corner of the frame that the wire was indeed stripped from the piano, connecting the visual narrative to the audio we heard prior. This can be easily missed because it's so subtle, but Ari is the type of artist that likes to take full advantage of the canvas. Every frame and visual motif had a deliberate purpose. Even now in this frame, there's a miniature to the left, once again symbolizing control and manipulation. So one side is foreshadowing what's to come, while the other side reinforces the narrative, with the subject Peter being the targeted focal point in the center. And now we're arriving at one of my favorite shots from the film, where Peter discovers his father, Steve's charred corpse, in front of the fireplace. And once he walks into frame, we the audience discover the demon Payman's new hidden positioning in the house, and he is once again positioned above Peter on the ceiling. And in a very twisted and traumatizing way, this is the last time we'll ever see the remaining family members all together in one frame again. This particular medium shot is actually overflowing with symbolism though, for several reasons. But first we'll talk about the blocking or positioning of the characters, and not only Payman as previously discussed. We already understand that Payman is framed above Peter because it displays a position of power, and Peter is positioned below in a vulnerable and unaware position. But now we have Peter's father Steve positioned at the bottom of the frame. On the surface, Steve is positioned at the bottom on the floor because he's dead and he was burned alive. But beyond that, Steve represented good and normality in the Graham household. He sort of served as Peter's last defense or protector throughout their family's tragic dynamics. But Steve representing good has fallen, and Payman representing evil has risen. And finally, Peter, taking up most of the frame, is now the current focus. After cutting away to scan Steve's body and identifying that it's him from his wedding ring, we jump to a medium close-up, now cutting Steve completely out of the frame. Because just as Steve is no longer in the frame, it's also clear that he is no longer in Peter's life. It's a required part of Peter that he no longer has access to. There's a lot of anticipation here because we're waiting for Payman to attack, but he's waiting because Peter is actively being exposed to more and more traumatic events, which makes him vulnerable. And this element makes him more of an ideal host to eventually be possessed by Payman. The same way how Annie wasn't possessed until she witnessed Steve burning alive. Once Peter hears a noise behind him, he immediately goes out and then back into focus. And for a brief moment, Payman is in focus as though it's finally time for Peter to meet his demise. But instead, we get a brilliant misdirect as the camera pans away from the actual threat to reveal one of the naked cult members from his grandmother's funeral standing in a doorway smiling at him, once again adding to the trauma and preparation of Peter's vessel. And in this moment, Peter hears a knock from upstairs, redirects his attention to where Payman was, and hidden in the frame, Payman burst from the shadows, chasing Peter through the house and back upstairs to where he locks himself in the attic. From the moment nighttime arrives, Ari starts having a field day with tucking creepy cult people away in the shadows of the frames throughout this sequence. There's such an exceptional use of shadows here that it feels like it may require a couple rewatches to spot every hidden cult member. You might even begin to think that there's areas where they're lurking simply because it's so dark that you're unsure, and this is all intentional. What we witness throughout this film and this entire sequence stems from the director Ari Aster's greatest fears. He revealed during an interview that dying alone is one of his fears, which is basically what we see happening here with Peter since he's the last of his family to go. Then he says, "I'm afraid of being responsible for something horrible happening to someone I love and then not being forgiven." This, of course, is a reference to what happens to Charlie and how Annie never truly forgives Peter for what happened. And then he goes on to reveal how someone in his family turning on him is also one of his fears. How that's something he's not even aware of consciously, but how his nightmares as a kid were always of someone who matters most to him changing. And this is a reference back to how consciously Peter is unaware that Annie is possessed, and now she has changed and turned on him. So just as Peter is Payman's vessel, he is also Ari's vessel for us to experience his deepest fears vicariously through Peter. Now once Peter makes it to the attic, here is where the dynamics change as I mentioned earlier. And although this change in positioning isn't expressed in an actual camera frame, we understand that Payman is below Peter at this moment. But the reason why this is never expressed in an actual camera frame isn't simply because they're not in the same room. There's many camera tricks that can be done to show them on each side of the frame simultaneously. This is done because the idea of Peter's safety and control is only an illusion. Now although Payman does become livid and vengeful when offered a female host, his frustration banging Annie's head against the attic door makes it seem as though Peter might be able to escape. Also, the close-up shot of him locking the door combined with the banging noise and even the music completely dies down as if to emphasize that Peter is getting one final moment of peace. But once again, Peter is not in control. He eventually notices all the candles the cult has left behind, but he fails to notice the cult member hidden in the darkness behind him. In this wide shot, we the audience may also fail to see this to share that unawareness with Peter. As previously mentioned before, Ari likes to take full advantage of the candles. After Peter notices the candles and his photo on the floor symbolizing his death and being targeted by the cult, he tries to slap himself awake, hoping it's all a nightmare before hearing a grinding sound above him. This sound brilliantly activates an arc shot, swinging us back to a medium close-up tightly in front of Peter. Arc shots can circle completely around the subject or just move in a curved path like we see here, typically to portray emotional depth. At this time, Peter desperately needs a moment to gather himself, to try to make sense of what he's witnessing. But the sound design and arc shot combined with the medium close-up visually shows how he's being denied of any sympathy. And once he looks up, basically drenched in tears, there's Payman floating above him, slowly sawing off his mother's head with the piano wire. And Payman has once again reclaimed his position of power above Peter. Also, I think it's important to mention how in every scene during this sequence, Payman is already multiple steps ahead of Peter. In Peter's bedroom, Payman is already there before Peter wakes up. In the living room, Payman is already there waiting for Peter. He chases him and the ladder is already down for Peter to run into the attic. Peter thinks he's safe in the attic, but Payman moves through the walls and he is already there. This simply reiterates how Peter's demise is inevitable and inescapable. As Payman continues to saw away at Annie's neck, one of the naked cult members rings a bell that further startles Peter. And here is where Peter completely surrenders by jumping out of the window. After Payman is done beheading his mother for the ritual, he then takes full control of Peter. His final moments are arguably the worst of anyone in the film because he is tortured relentlessly. He literally wakes up into a nightmare, which makes this scene where he's trying to wake himself up align so well with what he's experiencing. But that's just the kind of sequence you end up with when the director enjoys traumatizing you. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I've been having a lot of fun creating these for you all, and I'm looking forward to creating a lot more.
Apart from horror, my go-to genre would have to be thrillers. Mystery thrillers, detective thrillers. There's something inherently engaging about piecing a well-constructed puzzle of a movie together. And some of the best types of these movies come from South Korea. Memories of Murder, Old Boy, The Wailing, all incredible mysteries with the perfect amount of horror sprinkled throughout. And as is almost tradition at this point on this channel, after rewatching The Wailing, I decided to take a look into the filmography of Na Hong-jin to see if there was anything worthwhile to watch. But surprisingly, I didn't find much. Na Hong-jin has only directed a total of 3 feature films, with a 4th on the way, which shocked me. The Wailing is such a tightly crafted film, I assumed he had been working for a long time to build up his talents, but it did make going through his films a lot easier than some of the other directors I've looked at. So naturally, I started at the beginning. It was a film I'd never heard of, a film that's both subversive and disturbing, a mystery unlike any I had ever seen before. I'm Nightmare Movies, and today I want to talk about 2008's The Chaser. Now, similar to the way we're thrown into an unorthodox setting in The Wailing, The Chaser throws us into the unique underground world of escorts. We get introduced to our protagonist, Jung-ho. Together with his one employee, they run an escort service, but their business isn't doing so well. 2 of his girls have ran away after receiving their advances, and we get to see firsthand why they would do so. This isn't exactly a safe career for these women. In the very next scene, Jung-ho sends one of his escorts over to a motel where she catches her client trying to sneak pictures of her. Insulting the man after being completely humiliated, she walks down the hallway to leave, only to be chased by the man. This is the kind of world that we're dealing with. Jung-ho arrives quickly after and discovers the motel staff restraining the client. And inside the room, we see the woman getting dressed, and more importantly, the aftermath of the fight. Without saying a word to Jung-ho, she leaves, and we get to see a little humanity from him. He takes the man back into the motel room and gives him a taste of his own medicine, slapping him, humiliating him, and ultimately extorting him. I wouldn't go so far as to say Jung-ho is a good person, but it is apparent that there's a side of him that doesn't want to see these women hurt. Maybe it's his own pride knowing he's responsible for them, or maybe it's empathy. Either way, it's not enough for yet another one of his girls to quit on him. In the car, the 2 of them discuss the girls who have gone missing. Jung-ho saying that they ran away and he can't report it to the police because obviously what they're doing isn't legal. But she believes that there's something much darker going on. And she tells him that he should know this. He used to be a detective, another important detail. Regardless, Jung-ho still needs to make money. So he rings Mi-jin, one of his girls who called out sick. Her daughter brings her the phone and Jung-ho forces her to go out and see a client. And this is where we're going to get into some dark stuff, so brace yourself. After Mi-jin gets picked up by her client, Jung-ho notices that the same number ending in 4885 has called before, and directly ties it to his 2 missing girls. He believes that whoever this man is taking his girls and trafficking them. So he decides to call Mi-jin and give her instructions to memorize the address and relay it back to him from the bathroom. This way he can come and confront the man. They arrive at the client's house and she takes note of the street address. As she enters, the man goes and sits on the couch, and Mi-jin tells him that she's gonna go shower and freshen up. Once inside, she turns on the shower and tries to text Jung-ho the address, but something's wrong. Her text isn't sending. She notices a window and thinks to open it to get better service. So Mi-jin, with no other way out, walks back into the living room and tells the man that she forgot the condom in the car. She asks if it's okay if she goes and grabs it, and he nonchalantly excuses her, but it doesn't look like she's going to be leaving anytime soon. Now, I definitely can't show what happens next. It's a little too disturbing and graphic for YouTube, but I'll explain as best I can. Mi-jin is hogtied in the bathroom. The man enters with a large bag and dumps a load of tools on the ground next to her. He tells her that the last girl kept screaming, so he had to cut her tongue out. From the pile of tools, the man picks up a chisel and puts it at the base of her skull, pulls out a hammer, and for the next 4 minutes, we watch as Mi-jin flails on the floor, avoiding every attempt this man makes to sever her spinal cord, until finally, frustrated and done messing around, he hits her over the head with the hammer before... An older couple interrupts the man and immediately recognizes his dog as someone else's, one of his previous victims. So on top of his already hectic night, he now has to account for 2 more bodies, and a car that needs to get taken care of. But this is when our 2 worlds collide, literally. Jung-ho and the man get into a car accident and have backed up traffic along these tight, narrow streets. Jung-ho is politely trying to get the man's information, but he catches on that this man is in a bit of a rush. So Jung-ho calls 4885. A long chase takes place, ending with Jung-ho catching and beating the man. He brings them back to their cars where a comical amount of people are now backed up on these roads, and a police officer is shown up to control the chaos. But ultimately, the police officer takes both of them in for questioning, noticing the man's injuries. Now, I just want to say we are currently 36 minutes and 50 seconds into an over 2-hour-long film, a murder mystery where the killer is already in police custody. And not only that, within the next 5 minutes, the man has already confessed to murdering the women and 6 other people that the police have been investigating for years. So you're probably wondering what the rest of this movie is going to be, and this is where I want to give some cultural context. Now, I'm going to try and get this as correct as I can, and do correct me if I'm wrong or clarify in the comments. But from what I was able to research, in South Korea, the National Police Agency is highly controversial and criticized for a number of different reasons. Many times, police officers have been caught taking bribes, bringing to light some of the internal corruption within the police force. Excessive force during protests is also apparently a long-running issue. And most importantly for the film we're talking about, a lot of police investigations show bias when dealing with politically sensitive cases. This helps paint a better idea of certain Korean films for me, like Memories of Murder, for instance, a film following some of the most incompetent police officers ever seen on screen, inspired by the real-life investigation of Korea's, quote, first serial killer, an investigation that has been heavily criticized for how mishandled it was, from evidence being tainted and even the false imprisonment of a man for those crimes. Or we can even look at another film by Na Hong-jin. The Wailing also follows police officers who do a terrible job investigating a string of murders plaguing their town. And this is where I want to bring it back to The Chaser. After the first 40 minutes, the rest of the film is split into 3 perspectives. First, the police's investigation as they try to get information and evidence to get an arrest. And while doing this, they're also dealing with the public backlash over not protecting the mayor of Seoul from having literal shit thrown in his face. The second perspective is Jung-ho's as he does his own investigation to track down Mi-jin, which eventually leads him to her house where he finds Mi-jin's daughter, alone with a broken front door because of Jung-ho's incompetence, and he decides to take her along with him to keep her safe. And the surprising third perspective, Mi-jin, who has awoken in the bathroom and is now trying to escape. All of them are connected to a ticking clock. 12 hours to find any substantial evidence. Otherwise, this murderer will be released since he was arrested without a warrant. So this story is all about who's going to find Mi-jin first, and will she escape? The entire middle section is where we really get into some of the disturbing and frustrating sides of this film. Disturbing because we learn more details about this killer and how he operates, and frustrating because of the previously mentioned investigation techniques. Let's start with the disturbing. There's a major scene at almost exactly the halfway mark where Jung-ho tries to gain information about where the killer lives and where Mi-jin is through the man's sister, but she has no other information to give other than he was in prison for 3 years, and she hasn't spoken to him since. Why is that? Well, as they're having this conversation, the woman's son enters the living room. All across this boy's head are stitches from some sort of wound, and he's also clearly suffered some sort of brain damage as he urinates on the floor. His mother goes to comfort him, and we learn that this is the aftermath of leaving her son alone with her brother. This is why he spent 3 years in prison. And now we get to bring it back to the frustrating side. Intercut with Junho's investigation are scenes in which the police are played and made to look like idiots time and time again. The man lies to the police, changing his story and creating all these paths that lead to nothing. On top of that, the police are actively telling each other to find evidence by any means, even if it means fabricating it. And all of this builds up to the climax of the film where our three perspectives collide in the most tragic way possible. Firstly, the man tells the police where he has supposedly buried some of the bodies. And upon morning, Junho and the police go to dig up the whole area in hopes of finding any sort of evidence. But as they do, the 12 hours are up, and the man can go free. At almost the exact same time, Mi-jin has finally escaped her restraints. She crawls out of the window of the house and hides in a nearby convenience store, calling the police and Junho, praying that someone comes to save her. And while Junho is still looking for her, the police are not going to be coming. They're a little distracted digging up a dead end. And with a severe concussion stopping her from continuing, she just waits for help to arrive, but you can probably guess who shows up instead. The man enters the convenience store, finds that Mi-jin is here, and proceeds to kill the store owner and Mi-jin in one of the most upsetting scenes I've had to sit through. And I almost forgot to mention, there's a police officer tailing the man. As soon as he's released, this police officer stays no more than 100 feet away from this man. But as soon as he enters the convenience store, she just sits outside waiting for him to leave. But he never does, at least out of the front door. The man sneaks out of the convenience store through the back window and is gone with nothing but a pair of bodies left behind. This is when Junho arrives, not only feeling that he directly caused this, but also realizing that she tried to reach out to him, but he didn't answer. It's a heartbreaking scene, and the biggest part of what makes this scene so tragic is looking back at all the opportunities they had to avoid this, starting at the very beginning by just not having Mi-jin go out. And now all that's left of her is her dismembered body and her poor orphaned daughter. But we're not done with the story yet. Junho is able to track down the man to his house, and the two fight, with Junho eventually gaining the upper hand. But just as he's about to get his revenge, the police finally enter and stop Junho, arrest the man, and put an end to this tragic story. And that is The Chaser. This was honestly such a refreshing take on such a formulaic genre. If you're familiar with detective movies at all, you know how these stories typically go. The entire movie is essentially one or two guys going after a serial killer. And other than seeing how different killers operate in different movies, there's not that much that differentiates them. But like I said, 36 minutes and 50 seconds into this movie, we know who the serial killer is, and he is already in custody. And that's something genuinely unique. Even with that, the film never feels like it slows its pace. There's always things going on, new twists happening, new information being given to us. And I absolutely loved it. And like I said, if that sounds like something interesting, give it a shot. And with all that being said, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'm Nightmare Movies. And I'll see you all next time.
Well, hello, and welcome to a new podcast. I've got the house to myself today, which is why my voice is raised. And you know what? I am super pumped for this podcast. Hello, and welcome, sickos. Sensory Stars, you may know me as. Kirsty McQueen, you may know me as. Or just a sicko, you know, that does podcasts. Anyway, I'm Sensory Stars. It's a pleasure to virtually meet you if you are listening to this podcast. I do appreciate all the love and support that everybody gives me on this podcast. And I hope you are having a lovely afternoon. It is a fine evening here. The sun was blaring. It drained my energy, but now...
Is this going to be something I can pull off? So that was my only concern.
When it comes to what I'd call modern classics in gaming, we have plenty of choices, from the recently released Baldur's Gate 3, Fear and Hunger, Elden Ring, or Genshin. Genshin.
This place right here scares me to death. There's something evil here. There were several bodies that came down this river and washed up underneath this bridge. I feel this massive wave of energy smack me deep in the chest and threw me over this concrete.
Well, you got body slammed by a ghost?
Yes. Dozens of people have died on this bridge. Car accidents, drownings, jumpers, you name it. But no one knows why the spirits are so angry.
Several people are buried here. So are these like unmarked graves?
I believe so. I wasn't here antagonizing. I wasn't here trying to find, negativity, but it found me.
It's a weird vibe around here.
Tonight, we're here in San Angelo, Texas, at a location that's notorious for its paranormal activity, the Lone Wolf Bridge.
Ooh, it just got cold down here, dude. Meth? Did you die from doing meth? I don't think I'm alone. The flood. There's bones and a gun out there. Go, go, go!
So many of these deaths have been covered up. This is crazy.
Tonight on the Paranormal Files, we're here in San Angelo, Texas, at a location that's notorious throughout the town for its paranormal activity, the Lone Wolf Bridge.
I've been in the darkness for 40 days.
The guy that we interviewed earlier for this video told us some crazy stories of paranormal activity from this area, including one story where he was physically pushed by a ghost off of this platform onto the ground.
I've been called a righteous man before. Yeah, I've been closer to Jesus before. So can you help me out? Oh, can you help me out?
It's interesting though, because nobody knows exactly who is haunting this bridge. It could be the ghosts of people that died in a local flood that washed away an entire town, an indigenous spirit that's haunted this land for years, or even something darker. But the answer to that question is what we're here to find out. So thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Colin Browen, and you're watching The Paranormal Files.
As a paranormal investigator, my job isn't just about ghosts. It's also about facing real physical dangers. Exploring abandoned buildings and haunted houses means dealing with potential hazards like collapsing structures, wet and slippery floors, rusty nails in the walls, and so much more. One wrong step in one of the buildings that we film in could lead to serious injury, and I've seen how quickly things can go wrong in these environments. I can remember one time when I was investigating inside of a haunted warehouse. A shelf collapsed, a heavy box fell down on top of me and knocked me to the ground. It was a close call. Luckily, I wasn't hurt, but it could have been so much worse. That experience made me realize how important it is to have protection in case something like that happens again, especially when injuries can have lasting impacts. In today's world with so many risks, it's important to have a partner like Morgan & Morgan, who can keep you safe and compensate for any injuries you may sustain in life if you become their client. And in addition, when you're seriously hurt, your injury could be worth millions. Morgan & Morgan don't settle for lowball offers. In the past, they've achieved significant verdicts like $12 million in Florida and $26 million in Philadelphia for car crash victims. And the fee is absolutely free unless you win your case. I've dealt with personal injury attorneys before, and let me tell you, it can be a brutal process, especially if you've been seriously injured and you can tell that your attorney's heart just isn't in the fight. But that won't happen with Morgan & Morgan. Get you this makes injured well with Morgan & Morgan at Scanning.
Introduce yourself and tell us what you know about this bridge.
Well, my name is Dylan Lane. I'm a resident here in San Angelo, and I have frequented investigating this bridge right here, Lone Wolf Bridge. Story goes, is back in the 1930s, I believe, the community down the river here called Ben Fickman that was washed away in a flood, and there were several bodies that came down this river and washed up underneath this bridge, all in this area. It's kind of this washed up here. Ever since then, there have been sightings of strange phenomena of spirits, footsteps on the bridge. Matter of fact, one of my most compelling experiences I've had was I was fishing right there on the bank underneath the bridge, and all of a sudden I'm hearing, middle of the afternoon, I'm hearing people just running, like 3 or 4 different people running, boom, 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 on the bridge. So So I go up on the bridge, and there was nobody else, not a soul. Nobody around, no cars, nothing. You can move around here. There's like plenty of area where you'd be able to notice somebody roaming around. And so I decided to come back, and when I really started getting into the paranormal, I come up here with some equipment. I grab an SB7 spirit box, and I start getting these responses talking about flood. And I hear this woman's voice saying, I died, and then flood. Not too long after that, same exact female voice. So I start digging in deeper, start getting really into it. And then a few days later, I come back. I had probably one of the most intense physical experiences I've ever had right here. I come underneath here, and I'm sitting right here, and all of a sudden I'm hearing footsteps all circling me. And I'm just like, who's that around me? If you're here, show yourself. I feel this massive wave of energy smack me deep in the chest and threw me over this concrete step right here.
Well, you got body slammed by a ghost?
Body slam, dude. It's here, like I was sitting just like this, and all of a sudden it's like I'm hearing all around me, and I'm like, who is here? Show yourself. Tell me who you are. I want to know if are you somebody who passed away in the flood in Ben Ficklin and whose body washed up on shore underneath this bridge. And all of a sudden it's here from right where you're standing, 3 loud footsteps, and I felt like we're getting sawed over.
Shit, that's crazy, man.
I'm telling you, dude, it's wild. Like, a lot of people don't seem to, like, and I'm not the only one. People have had experiences. They're out down here fishing a lot, and they'll, like, see people moving in the bushes out of the corner of their eye. They'll look over, and there's nobody there. It's just one of those locations that, like, my theory is when it comes to the paranormal, spiritual lore, they say that ghosts can't cross running water, right? So my thing is like, if they're trying to move somewhere, if they're trying to go somewhere, how are they going to do that? They have to cross over the only solid object that crosses that water, which is a bridge. So there could be entities and spirits here that are moving across here, going from place to place, that have nothing to do with that flood and everything to do with anything else. Like, we gotta remember this place is historic. We don't know the full extent of the land, of the region around here, even since before San Angelo was even a thing.
The Lone Wolf Bridge in San Angelo, Texas arches over the South Concho River. Its aging structure a silent witness to decades of sorrow since its construction in 1922. Locals whisper of a curse that clings to its narrow span, an unseen force that seems to draw tragedy with a relentless pull, as if the bridge itself thrives on despair. The bridge, which, like I said before, was constructed in 1922, was considered to be one of the most dangerous places in Tom Green County by the year 1950. And by the early 1950s, its poor condition, blamed for 12 serious vehicle crashes in 1951, sparked debates to replace it with wider Metcalf Bridge. San Angelo local Colonel Perry of Goodfellow Field at the time called Lone Wolf Bridge the county's top traffic hazard. Eventually, it was decided that a newer, safer bridge was to be built nearby, named the Metcalf Bridge, but after construction was finished on the new structure, only the old, abandoned Lone Wolf Bridge remained, its rusted railings and cracked concrete standing as a monument to the darkness that now haunts it. It's interesting, though, the Lone Wolf Bridge in San Angelo often appears in searches for the most haunted places in San Angelo. It's always ranked by locals and authors alike as one of the most haunted places in Texas, and its eerie reputation has captivated those drawn to the paranormal for years. Yet exactly who haunts the bridge or why it's haunted remains a mystery. In fact, to this day, no one even really knows why the bridge itself was named Lone Wolf Bridge. Could it have been named after a Kiowa Comanche chief named Lone Wolf who led a raid against Texan troopers near where the bridge sits today? Well, it's rumored that Lone Wolf's son's body was discovered near where the bridge was eventually constructed. But still, no documentation exists to prove that Lone Wolf was the inspiration for the name. It also could have been named for a nearby town that vanished from the Texan countryside years ago, also named Lone Wolf. However, it's up in the air. And to this day, no one can pinpoint exactly who haunts the bridge or why, with local legends offering only whispers of restless spirits tied to its tragic past. Adding to this enigma, there's no definitive resource that chronicles the bridge's true history, no document giving you a rundown of the history of the bridge or the deaths that occurred on or around it, which has left the bridge's dark legacy scattered across fragmented newspaper clippings and oral stories. Without a centralized record, the full scope of deaths on and around the bridge remains elusive and mysterious, which only deepens the intrigue of this cursed crossing. In doing the research for this video, I spent hours going through old newspaper archives, books, and documents trying to find each and every death associated with the Lone Wolf Bridge, and I was absolutely astounded. If you Google Lone Wolf Bridge death, not a single result comes up online for a confirmed casualty that occurred on or around the bridge. They're simply brought to articles claiming that the bridge is haunted, which provide no evidence for exactly why the bridge may be home to ghosts. However, I'm proud to present to you a comprehensive breakdown of the deaths and accidents that occurred on that bridge for you now, to my knowledge, for the first time online. Hopefully, this information that I've gathered for this video can answer some questions for us about why the structure is so spiritually active. First of all, we have to talk about the car wrecks. As I was doing research through old newspaper archives, I discovered that the Lone Wolf Bridge over the years, before it was decommissioned, became a graveyard for drivers, its cursed aura claiming lives in a series of devastating car accidents. On February 21st, 1965, a 24-year-old man named Tommy Van Hill died on the bridge after the driver of the car that he was in accidentally slammed the car into the bridge's railing, careening it off the edge of the bridge and he was left dangling out over the river. Young Tommy was thrown from the vehicle and landed on the dry ground beneath the bridge, where our interview was taking place for this video. There was also a fatal crash on the bridge on July 3rd, 1935, when W. Lee Williams, a 71-year-old ranchman from the Cristoval section of San Angelo, Texas, was fatally injured in a car collision on the east end of the Lone Wolf Bridge at around 3 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. W. Lee Williams' vehicle collided head-on with another car, and he suffered internal injuries and head injuries, which led to his death at a local hospital by 3:30 a.m. that day. There were also plenty of other incidents and wrecks that occurred on the bridge that were non-fatal. These included the times when San Angelo resident Kenneth Roy Hubbard's car crashed, flipped over, and burned on the bridge in 1962. There was also the time when a man named Felix Medina Zappa slammed his car into the railing of the bridge and wrecked his car in 1975. And even in 1955, when a John A. Jack Rolls crashed his 1953 Chevrolet on the bridge, which sent it flying over the edge onto the hard ground below, where it landed belly up. In 1951, a man named Bill C. Burwich's GMC truck sideswiped the bridge, damaging concrete posts, while another collision on the bridge in the 30s left young J.H. Clark, 16 years old at the time, unconscious, underscoring the bridge's deadly reputation as a trap for the unwary. There was another major crash in 1953 when someone drove a GMC truck into the bridge's railing, damaging it even further, and at this point I think you guys can see why they voted on closing the bridge and building something safer. It seemed like the Lone Wolf Bridge, from its very beginning, was a magnet for negative energy, and people just couldn't stop crashing their cars there. As stated before, this bridge was known as one of the most dangerous places in Tom Green County, and it definitely earned its reputation. However, the Lone Wolf Bridge, over the years, saw plenty of other kinds of deaths, crimes, and mysterious events as well. You see, the curse of the Lone Wolf Bridge extends to those who have from its heights. So at this point in the original version of this video, I went through some other deaths that happened on the bridge, including the death of a man who was found underneath the bridge with his neck broken, a man who parked a car on the bridge with his wife and kids inside, and then decided to take a swim in the river and was never found again, a man in the 1930s who also decided to take a swim after climbing the bridge, and other newspaper reports that I found where people saw some very suspicious things happening on and around the bridge, but no bodies were ever recovered. Unfortunately, YouTube has censored me, so I cannot talk about the real history of this bridge in this regard, but I'm going to post the full unedited video with that history in it on my Patreon account. But just know that there were at least 3 different people who died at the bridge in this sort of horrific and tragic manner, and it's unknown if one of those men did it himself or if he was killed by somebody. I'll actually leave some more details about these incidents in the comments section of the video. The South Concho River, which flows beneath the Lone Wolf Bridge, also conceals a deadly danger, its calm surface belying a cursed water current that has claimed numerous lives. Now, we already talked about the flood that happened in the 1800s nearby, which wiped out entire communities and ended up killing dozens of people. But there have also been dozens of people who have drowned in the Concho River itself, in completely unrelated accidents and occurrences, and a few of those drownings have occurred near the Lone Wolf Bridge. On July 18, 1931, a 32-year-old man named C.A. Briley drowned from exhaustion while swimming near the bridge, which marked the 3rd drowning in the Concho River that summer. His body was recovered near the bridge shortly afterwards, a somber marker of the river's toll. There's also the mystery of what exactly happened to a soldier named Frank J. Crean. In April 1943, the body of Corporal Frank J. Cream was discovered floating in the South Concho River, 1 mile south of the Lone Wolf Bridge. Cream, a soldier stationed at nearby Goodfellow Field, had gone missing on March 31st and wasn't found until almost 2 weeks later. At the time, military authorities conducted a preliminary examination of Corporal Cream's body and found no evidence of violence, which left them puzzled about the cause of death and exactly how and when he had died. A report from Captain Herbert J. Lipson, a flight surgeon at Goodfellow Field Station Hospital, indicated that at the time that Cream's body was found, he had been dead for more than 24 hours. Cream is described as having an excellent character rating in the Army and a very cheerful disposition, so it was curious that he was found dead. He wouldn't do that to himself, but friends and family members at the time stated. He was happy as could be. Friends at the Goodfellow Field noted that Cream had left $20 with them for a furlough before he headed into town on the night of March 31st, and that he had not been heard from or seen since. His body was eventually discovered weeks later by Corporals Arthur E. Hansen, Vernon E. Byers, and Eldo Wayne Young when they were out squirrel hunting nearby. No further clues were ever found regarding the circumstances of Corporal Cream's death. So, did Corporal Cream in the Lone Wolf Bridge? Was he taken there and pushed off by someone nefarious? Or was his death completely unrelated to the bridge? All these answers are still unknown. The Lone Wolf Bridge over the years also attracted incidents of violence as readily as accidents, with its cursed energy drawing active aggression that left a palpable trail of fear in the nearby community. In 1967, a man from San Angelo named Charles R. Horn was brutally attacked on the bridge after picking up a hitchhiker, who rapped him across the head with a knife and stole his wallet, watch, shoes, and trousers, leaving him unconscious on the bridge. Local reports at the time even noted the robber even took victims' trousers. Then, in June 1971, a man named Arturo Gonzalez of Sonora was stopped by 2 men around 3 a.m. when he was attempting to drive over the bridge. The men then pulled him out of the car, assaulted him, and beat him with an ice pick after he refused to give any money to the 2 assailants. There was another report made in February 1975 when a woman was assaulted near the bridge on a Wednesday afternoon after falling asleep in her car. The woman told police that after she fell asleep in her vehicle, a man approached her car and began writing down her license plate number. The man then told the woman that she was in a dangerous neighborhood, asked her some graphic questions about her sex life, then attempted to enter the vehicle and, quote, struggle with her. After she fought him off, the man fled the scene. In another case of violence on the bridge, a man named Michael Williams was driving across Lone Wolf Bridge when his car was firebombed. Someone tossed a beer bottle full of alcohol with a burning rag into his car, which immediately caught the vehicle on fire and caused significant damage. Then, on a Friday night in 1983, a 26-year-old woman was arrested while on the bridge by Master Patrolman John Rees for attempted murder after a shooting incident, her actions adding to the bridge's legacy of violence, as if it thrives on the chaos that it inspires. Beyond death and violence, the Lone Wolf Bridge draws strange occurrences that defy explanation, cementing its reputation as a cursed crossing. In 1961, a metal box containing auto titles and notes, stolen from local car dealership A.J. Ryan Used Cars, was found in a patch of grass near the bridge after being dumped there by thieves. And in 1978, in a perplexing mystery, a canoe that was stolen in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 1974 mysteriously appeared abandoned years later, floating in the Concho River near the bridge. Its journey from Minneapolis to San Angelo, Texas, a baffling enigma. In 1961, a goat blocking traffic on the bridge was removed and tethered by patrolman Henry Landgraf to City Hall's lawn, an oddity that underscores the bridge's ability to attract the bizarre. And in August of 1976, a search for stolen property, which included a CB radio, performed by patrolman William Fiveash, was thwarted by a tree in the water. As you can see, thieves, robbers, assailants, would-be murderers, they flocked to Lone Wolf Bridge both when it was active and when it wasn't. It seemed to be a good place for dumping things as well. So there is reason to believe that there may be some sort of a murder weapon or some sort of an item that was involved in a crime sitting in the waters beneath Lone Wolf Bridge, just adding to the area's mystique. All these peculiar events, set against the backdrop of the bridge's tragic history, fuel whispers of a supernatural force, a curse that ensures that the Lone Wolf Bridge remains a place where the ordinary turns sinister under its ominous shadow. So, if you look up the Lone Wolf Bridge online, you're not going to find any of that information. It took me hours and hours to comb through articles, magazines, anything and everything to try gather all this stuff, And I think it's really interesting. The Lone Wolf Bridge is known by locals, people of all ages from San Angelo, as being one of the most haunted places in town, but they don't really know the true history. And when I found out this true history, I was absolutely shocked. There was so much negativity in the past associated with this bridge, from the jumpers to car accidents, robberies, drowning deaths. I mean, it's pretty shocking when you consider all this negativity happening right here. But anyways, let's get back to our interview.
When it comes like going back to the theory, they have, you know, the bridges with death. They say that you cross a bridge. Like there's always, when it comes to the other side, it always has something to do with the bridge. And I feel like that has something to do within our own physical plane as well.
And so there was a flood that happened up the river. Like,
yeah, I think it was in 1936. There was that community called Ben Ficklin. There's a cemetery out there that's all gated up and stuff, and people that died in that flood and whatever are buried there. And the community itself is no longer around because, like I said, it was wiped away in that flood. When the dam broke further up the Concho and completely flooded the area. And like, I think they said 17 bodies washed up ashore along the Concho River, and several of them were like right in this area there because they would just come up against the boards of this bridge and just get stuck there.
That's so interesting though. Like, I wouldn't imagine a person who died in a flood would run up and body slam you.
Exactly.
You know?
And that right there is really what kind of like pushed me towards my theory of crossing the bridge. Like, it may not have even been somebody from the flood. It may be something entirely different. And I was just here at the wrong place at the wrong time, and I came up with an entity that came from somewhere else entirely, and decided to be like, you know what, this is my place. And also, over the years, you know, we've seen evidence of drug use, stuff like that. That's all negative energy that happens around here. And I believe that my theory is with the energy, especially when it comes to negativity, is that it builds up, it builds and builds to the point where it develops its own sense of its own senses. It's sentient in a way. And that's why I believe that that's probably what it was. It's just like the negative energy in itself, not maybe an individual person's entity or spirit.
Really, that kind of goes back to what we were going through last night. I mean, there's negativity in the land with what happened to the Native Americans, what happened with soldiers that were stationed here, just like not being able to do anything, going crazy. And then, I mean, you have drug use problems here now, and I mean, you go down and the energy just festers and festers, and at some point it's got to have some release. And so maybe that's what's happening here. It's really interesting. So do you feel like it's kind of like, because sometimes you have these hauntings where it's like positive, but obviously you have negative. What's your vibe here? What do you get really at night?
The vibe here, when it gets real quiet late at night, it's a flip of a coin. You just flip that coin, you can get either or. At the drop of a dime, you can be like, hey, how's it going? You can be talking to a spirit, and all of a sudden, boom, it's a complete 180 that just, like what happened with me, slams you out of nowhere. I wasn't here antagonizing. I wasn't here trying to find, you know, negativity, but it found me, because I think I was just, like I said, I just caught it at that moment.
Why do they call it Lone Wolf Bridge? Do you know?
Honestly, I think that was just, it could possibly have something to do with the fact that at the time, this was the only major bridge crossing along this section of the Concho River before they built that one, and there were several others. So I think maybe that this was just, you know, the Lone Wolf. As far as, like, there's been other names for it. They call it the Lover's Bridge because people will come up here and they'll take like locks, and if they're like in a relationship or extra names or their wishes in it, take a lock and clink it to the railing up there. There's other things where nowadays at night they light it up like the 4th of July in here. For whatever reason.
Maybe it's to keep people away from the angry ghosts.
Possibly.
So what about other people that you know? Like, what have their experiences been like out here?
I got a buddy of mine that was here when that happened to me. But he was on the top. He just heard me. He's like, dude, what the just happened? Yeah, he comes running down the bridge. I'm like, I'm fine. I just got knocked on my ass by something. And so, for some reason, like, it targeted, I don't know why it targeted me, but didn't want to go towards him. Like, everything resonated around me. Like I said, there's stories of people where they'll be out here, they'll see people moving around, they'll hear voices and stuff like that, and not knowing where it's coming from. So other people have had experiences, but I don't know of the fact that if I'm the only one that ever had that kind of experience here. Because not very many people come here doing it. Maybe it's because I was actually here trying to find it. And I wasn't just, you know, a random showing up to just do whatever. I was actually here trying to communicate with the energy here. So maybe that's part of the liver.
It's really interesting. I mean, you feel like it's more active under here versus up top?
It's definitely more active under, and that's the weird thing about bridges I've noticed other than bridges I've investigated, like the one in Devon and all this other stuff. It's like it's always underneath for some reason. And I believe that's maybe because the maybe because that water flowing, that's creating energy. That water flowing right now, that's creating energy. That's feeding the energy around us. So for us, maybe they have to be near that in order to manifest and communicate. So maybe because they have to be on the bank in order to absorb it, perhaps maybe that's why it's underneath and not so much up top. But maybe that up top might be the crossing, but underneath is the collective.
Dang. Sure. When you think about like the body washing up here and what that would have looked like back then, it's just a eerie, thought.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're just walking up here and all of a sudden you just see a person you don't understand. Like that's a life that's been extinguished and it's just laying there. And now maybe because on this bank that they were found, that could be another reason why it's still collecting underneath here.
Drowning's a proven death too.
Yeah, that's one of the worst ways to go. I would not want no.
Especially drowning in a river during a flood.
But yeah, that's not just water. That's pressured water. That's that's like a wave of concrete just hitting your body, forcing you around. You can't move, you can't do nothing. Because the water is just forcing you wherever it wants to take you. That's why they say water is the most important natural resource we have, but it's also the most destructive force in the world.
So like, after all of your investigating that you've done here, do you feel like there's like a name attached to any of the entities here? Or like, do you feel like you know who you might have been talking to?
That's the thing, I can't ever seem to get a name. As much as I try, I just can't seem to get it. I've only ever, verbal communication I've ever captured was when I got that female. So I know there's at least a female here that is intelligent and communicates, but all she said was flood and died, and I died at flood. That was it. But every time I get her name, it would go blank. And then I try to look into, maybe records or something that maybe I can find the name, and I can't really find it. All I found was the story of the bodies washing underneath here, but they weren't named. Probably because they didn't know who they were. Yeah. When they found them, there's probably no forms of identification.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Do you have any other questions? Is that cemetery close with the victims?
Yeah, kind of. It's on the other side of the loop, off of Loop 306, around towards there's a road called Van Plickling Road, and it's right there on that road. But if you're not, you have to really kind of look for it.
Would you drive us over there and talk about it with us?
Yeah, do that.
So I think that'd be interesting to go there before the sun sets and say, if there's anybody here, come and speak with us at the bridge. Maybe if there's someone you can help us cross over or speak with.
Scorpions, black widows, spiders, snakes, thorn plants, trip hazards. What a sign.
Everything. Something I've seen all the time. It's kind of obvious.
Watch out!
All right, man. You want to just kind of explain to us where we are?
Well, right now we're at in the community of what's left of Ben Ficklin. It's the Ben Ficklin Cemetery. This is the community of the area that was washed away by that flood. That dam that we passed by, that's the one that the floodwaters came over. The gates completely broke and it flooded this whole area all the way up to here. You can see the river right back over there. All this right here was flooded and washed away. And that was the end of Ben Ficklin. This is where the bodies that I was telling you about had washed up. Several of them have washed up underneath the Lone Wolf Bridge. So if you notice how far we traveled, we literally traveled all the way down across the river lane. They traveled from here all the way over there and washed out. There was no telling what they were hitting along the way and stuff and then they were brought back here when the waters receded and the cemetery was created. And as you can see, there's several people are buried here. Some of them are supposedly from those floodwaters because they were from here in this area.
So are these unmarked graves?
I believe so. All of them, yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
And I think that's probably partially the reason why this area here also gets activity. Because they say about cemeteries and unmarked graves. When you die, the name is it's the one thing that you leave on this earth. when you don't take it, you can't take, it's not sealed on a stone
Appreciate
and marked where you're laid to rest. I believe that is one of the main reasons why you get so many hauntings in cemeteries. Because it's like you have your marks, but who's to say there's not 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 of people that are unmarked buried underneath this dirt.
So what about, have you had any paranormal experiences here?
Yeah, right up here.
That's so interesting. These just all unmarked.
A few of them have a marking. The rest, all you get is a rock. The rock, but nothing on it. This area, we were kind of just, we had a whole group of people, and a buddy of mine. We're just kind of standing here. We had a spirit box running, and it was just going ham. Like, it just kept telling us, like, these get, like, really, like, in a way, negative somewhat, but not to the point where it started threatening, but just like it wanted us to leave. And all we were here doing was just like, hey, is there anybody here? And also light anomalies up the walls here. Like, we just see like this flash of light. You see it. And it'll be over here. It'll be right here. And it would like literally light up the wall and everything. So it's not like a firefly where it pulses as it goes. This was like immediately there, all within like a span of like 2 seconds.
That's crazy.
It like really flashed like. We all was like, what the hell is going? What the hell is that?
Do you think that that's just like the activity here comes from the fact that so many of these graves are unmarked?
Absolutely. That is a telltale first huge telltale sign right there. Because yeah, we see the graves. These are what we have. Who's to say we don't have more? Like I was saying earlier. And they're marked, but what are they marked with? A rock with nothing on it. So all it is just, it's like, yes, there's somebody here, but there's no telling as to who. And you see the size of them?
That's crazy.
That's a telltale that there's probably a child there.
That is wild when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you want to add about being out here, history-wise? Anything interesting?
Definitely try to, if you come out here, definitely try to like focus a lot of attention in this area. Like call out some of these names you have, and I guarantee like you'll start getting like, especially using like SB7 spirit box or some kind of spirit box, that they really love that kind of attention, because you know it's verbal communication. These are souls that are stuck here with nobody to talk to. Try to really like influence it to tell its story, and I can almost guarantee you it probably will.
Very interesting, man. You'd never even know a place like this exists.
Yeah, it's just one of those right there on the side of the highway.
Okay.
You know, it's just
literally right there. That's so strange. I think it's crazy you can see all the dust in the air.
Huh?
All right, to anybody who might be here in the Ben Ficklin Cemetery, if you died during that flood, if you're here in one of these unmarked graves, please follow Connor and I. My name's Colin.
My name's Connor.
We're gonna be going to the Lone Wolf Bridge. You might know where that's at here in town. We might come back later, but we would love to help tell your story and communicate with you. And if some of you are upset that your names aren't known, maybe you can tell us your names and communicate with us, and we can help get you some closure. Or just follow us, because we'd love to talk. You want to say something?
I'm about to get body slammed by a ghost, man.
Body slammed by the wind, man.
Yeah, anybody who's out here that lost their lives, your body washed up, please come talk to us tonight. Don't need to be afraid. We're friendly. Just want to have conversations with you and let us hear your story.
All right. Let's get to it, man. All right, everybody. Country to the bone. And
No one's gonna understand that. That was just a joke for Connor and I. Maybe someone will get that. We're here right now. It's approximately 9:30 at night. Very interesting. I will say that we're underneath the bridge right now. We're gonna go up and do the Estes on top of the bridge at the very end of this video. But already, just being here when it's dark, it definitely has more of a vibe and more energy than what I thought it would, have. Earlier, it's just like it's bright light, you're outside, you're next to this road. It didn't really feel like anything, but now that the sun has set here in this area, I don't know, it seems like it's starting to come to life. And visiting that cemetery earlier added a whole new dimension to this investigation. It's very bizarre to think about those bodies piling up right here. And while we were there earlier, inviting those spirits to come converse with us this evening. It's just interesting. And I don't know, I haven't done a bridge in a while. The last bridge that I believe we investigated was also here in Texas, Goatman's Bridge. So I'm excited. This is a cool new type of investigation. And according to the guy we interviewed earlier, some violent paranormal activity down here, which is shocking. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we don't really know much history about this location, but we do know that this town has had a lot of negative things happen to it, with wars between Native American tribes, people dying of diseases, floods, all that stuff. So we never know what we're gonna get in situations like this, but apparently it's really powerful spirits. So I'm excited.
Well, guys, without further ado, we're gonna set our stuff up down here and really start digging into who may be haunting this very famous bridge. I know we interviewed him earlier about this, but this is a notorious place in the town of San Angelo. Talked to a lot of people already. They recommended, even just today, we got new tattoos today. The people in the tattoo shop recommended that we check this bridge out. The owner of the location we filmed at last night was talking about this bridge, so it's a locally known haunted location. But what they don't know locally is who haunts it. So, it's waking up. Trying to earn a little extra pay.
There you go. Maybe that's what these ghosts are doing.
It's country to the bone, baby.
Oh,
it's country to the bone. All right, if you understand that joke, leave us a comment, please. We'll see who gets it.
You hear us.
Are you rolling?
Yeah.
All right, so we've been setting up here, and this REM pod has been going fucking bananas. Which is weird, because this is where he was sitting when he got shoved off of the thing. I mean, look at this.
Are you the spirit that pushed him off this ledge? No, leave us.
No, leave us? I mean, that is like a very strong hit.
Yeah. Meth?
What the hell?
Did you die down here from doing meth? I'm intrigued.
I'm intrigued. Like it's playing with this? I mean, dude, this is crazy how much this is going on. Look at none of there's a REM pod over there, and there's one down there that are not going off like this.
Can you stop touching that?
Here?
Here? Yeah, stop touching that thing right there. All right, I'm gonna turn this off. Thanks for showing us that you're here. There's another one over there and one down there if you want to play with them.
So did you die from doing meth?
Also, by the way, I want to start this off right. Thank you to anybody or anything that's down here. My name's Colin. Call for help.
My name's Connor. They hung me. Soldiers.
Soldiers hung me?
Is this the spirit of an indigenous person?
Dude, I mean, what if someone died an OD death under here? Like, it was funny. Stomach ache. Like, earlier when we first came down here.
Found a meth needle.
Yeah, we were remarking off camera about how much drug paraphernalia is on the ground under here. And he was telling us off camera that people come down here, you know, to do drugs.
Is that true? Is that how you died?
If that's true, you can tap that little bell over there. Maybe that's why someone's so pissed off. They could have died and had, like, their death kind of covered up. Up there. Bellatrix? There? My name's Colin, this is Connor. Can you tell us what your name is, whoever this is?
What is in your hand?
A camera.
We also have a couple devices where if you talk out loud, we might be able to hear what you have to say. What the fuck? There's a car coming down here. I don't know. Quick after.
Is it a cop?
No, it's just like a pickup. I didn't know you could drive down here.
Me either. So much heartache.
So much heartache down here.
Are they parking or turning around?
They're leaving.
I was treated bad.
I appreciate the help.
I was treated bad, so much heartache. It said southern and western.
Tear.
Tear? Like sadness? That person drove off. That was fucking weird. Trouble. Can you ring that bell?
Benjamin.
Ben? The cemetery. Ben.
The town.
Yeah.
That's crazy. What was it, Ben?
Ben Pickle? No, not Ben Pickle. I have no clue. Ben Pickle.
So you said Benjamin. Can you ring that bell, maybe? 1 second. I think there might be somebody who overdosed on drugs down here. But you also said Benjamin, and that flood took out the town.
He said the same name he said last time. Pickle. Follow us to that. It was up there. That was the way that the
town was.
The town was.
And the bodies came down here. So can you ring that bell if you died in the flood? The Ben Ficklin community that was wiped out by that flood? Look at this. Chain hit me, Satan. 11. Oh, did you hear something over there?
All right. And you caught those hostages. I can't very well ignore
I don't know where that came from.
Good to see you again. I do. Right. You want me?
Right. So, you did die in that flood. Is your name Benjamin?
Obviously.
Oh. All right, Benjamin. So we have someone from the flood down here. What's up with the sadness and the Satan hit me and the meth? Is there somebody who overdosed down here who's angry? Maybe your spirit's trapped here? David. So David, did you overdose down here and die? Maybe you had a heart attack? You could ring that bell if that's true. So David, are you the spirit or energy that's a little bit angry under here? Do you feel angry? You can ring that bell if that's true, if you do feel a little upset at what happened to you. Law. Drive? Law? The law? Drive?
The situation.
The situation. Were they trying to avoid, like, driving under the influence or something? Maybe that's why they died under here? Was it an overdose or did something violent happen to you? Axe killer. Did you overdose or did someone hurt you down here, David? Or maybe they didn't even necessarily. Maybe, I mean, like he said earlier, spirits could be coming from anywhere over here. David, can you tell me, did you actually die down here or did you somehow end up just trapped here?
Die down here, dude? Like,